Howdy, guys. Attorney Walter Hnot. Now, here's the deal. I know it's late. I know it's super late. I personally had to take a little break from the channel because I had so much going on. I just couldn't keep up with everything, so I had to kind of put the channel on a little mini break before I could get back to things. Now, a lot of big things happened while I was gone for this little mini vacation I was taking from the channel. And what happened was they came out with new bills that are trying to pass essentially SSI boosts in the amount of benefits that they're going to be allowed, and the amount of benefits they're allowed to hold on to. So there's a huge change with SSI going on potentially right now, but that's not what this video is about. So let's get right to the video. This video is about something that is now absolute certainty. It is absolute certainty because we have seen consistently problems relating to how the White House is trying to help us be able to buy more oil, to find more oil, to dig up more oil. How our food is now becoming a resource that people are trying to get as much of. Howdy, Jane Doe. We're going to go through in this video essentially what's going on as to why you are going to have the largest Social Security benefit increase in the history of the program, but for 2 years. Now remember, in order to have this, you have to have horrible inflation, right? Horrible inflation, president that does not understand economic policies and makes very poor choices. And as a result of that, the cost of living has to go so severely up. It has to go so high up into the clouds that they have to boost your benefits by a significant amount just to make it equivalent for you to be able to live. So you're not actually really getting more. You're just getting what they think it would cost you to live the same life at the same level with the same money. So here we go. Let's go through this real quick. Now, I want you to understand that the way this system is set up, people traditionally end up with less money calculated at the end of the day as a result of the cost of living adjustment as to how much money they get. Let's go through it. Oh, but before we start, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave 5-star reviews. The big thing for me is if you could leave a 5-star review for disability resolution. Again, disability resolution in Google. Out of every 1,500 people that I interact with, only one leaves a 5-star review, which is not a good metric because people just are lazy. They don't want to do it. But it really, really helps me out, especially with these videos and making more. Now, we're going to go through this article. This is specifically from a group some of you guys like, some of you guys hate. I'm trying to obviously keep the sources diverse. This one's from CBS News. I could have chosen CNET, any one of those, but I'm trying to keep it diverse in which information sources I use. Basic title for this: Social Security checks could jump 8.6%, biggest hike since 1981, expert says. Now remember, Jimmy Carter was in 1981. Jimmy Carter is widely accepted as the greatest economic failure of a president we've ever had, period. And President Biden is now considered the second greatest economic failure that we've ever had, period. So let me go through this real quick. And that's not to attack you on your political this or political that. That's purely just to say that they're numbers. The numbers are the numbers. It is what it is. Let's go through it. Seniors and other people who rely on Social Security benefits could next year see their biggest cost of living adjustment since 1981. With an advocacy group for older Americans forecasting an 8.6% hike. The typical monthly Social Security check is about $1,658. Which means beneficiaries could see an increase of $142.60 per month in early 2023, bringing the average check to about $1,800, according to a new forecast from the Senior Citizens League. That projection is based on the most recent U.S. inflation numbers, including the government's release on Wednesday of Consumer Price Index data for April, said Mary Johnson of the Social Security and Medicare Policy Analyst for the group. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, a broad basket of goods and services, rose 8.3% in April from a year ago, down slightly from an 8.5% annual increase in March. Now, Social Security's cost of living adjustment, or COLA, is based on a slightly different basket of goods and services that is also tracked by the government. So you've got what the government uses, COLA, and what everybody else uses, CPI. The Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, which is the CPI-W, and remember, they always have this thing of like the urban people versus the elderly people versus the worker people. They have these different metrics that they use when really they should just be using the elderly people, because disabled people and retired people spend money like elderly people. Oh. I'm not sure what happened there. Doggies got excited. That basket shows inflation is running slightly hotter than the broader price index, with the CPI-W jumping 8.9% in April from a year ago, according to government data. Sorry about that, guys. My doggies, it's literally 2:15 a.m. and out of nowhere. Either way, an 8.6% jump in monthly Social Security checks could provide some relief to millions of seniors struggling to keep pace with the surging costs for everything from gas to groceries. The 69 million Americans who collect Social Security received a 5.9% COLA increase in January, which we now know is significantly multiple points below what it should have been to actually keep you guys afloat as to what you're actually receiving. So the biggest jump since 1982. What do they mean by this? So now we're going to go out of this article into the realm of what's actually relevant here. So Jimmy Carter was president basically from 1977 to 1981. And the cost of living adjustment, usually the numbers we were accustomed to seeing were anywhere from like, zero, right? 0% increase to essentially the worst possible, which was 1980, which was 14.3% increase. So if you go back, 40 years, that's why they keep saying this is the biggest increase that we'll ever see in the past 40 years. They were looking at essentially last year as being the one that would break the record. It did. It did. So kind of the bottom line is President Biden, he won it. He won the second prize, the red ribbon, the red medal for being the worst financial president in America. Didn't take him long. Jimmy Carter also, I'll tell you what the percentages were. 1977, 5.9% increase in the cost of living adjustment. 1978, 6.5% increase. 1979, 9.9% increase. Okay. 1980, 14.3% increase. 1981, 11.2% increase. So what's important about this? So 1970, 1977, and 1981, that was Jimmy Carter's gig, right? So Jimmy Carter and Biden share their first year in office COLA numbers at 5.9%. A horrific number because that means the dollar devalued significantly, a heck of a lot more than it ever should have. Now, Jimmy Carter then went to the next stage. He went to 6.5%. Well, Joe Biden is going to actually surpass that significantly. And instead of just being 6.5% of Jimmy Carter, who was the worst financial mistake this country ever made, President Joe Biden will be hitting, it's expected to be 8.6% or even higher, which means that Joe Biden, at the end of year 2 of his presidency, could actually win the prize, the gold ribbon, the blue, ribbon around his neck for being the worst financial mistake the country's ever made. That's if you're gauging the metric on essentially what the cost of living adjustment will be. Thank you, good sir, for the $5 donation. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, indeed, we did go on holiday there for a whole week. We had to take a break. Now let's be realistic here. Jimmy Carter on his third year hit 9.9%, and on his fourth year hit 14.3%. Fifth year kind of and it all shapes based on when they get in and stuff like that as to what you want to call their year versus the prior presidency or whatever. But and when you go to the fifth, you get 11.2%. Then we get away from Jimmy Carter, it shrinks a lot, 7.4% to 3.5, 3.5, 3.1, 1.3, etc. It goes down to normal numbers after that. But the point is this. What's interesting is that last year we were like, this is the greatest increase. And all those cheap, junky channels out there on the social media, YouTube websites and stuff like that, they were saying, you're going to get so much money. It's the biggest increase you've ever seen in 40 years. Yeah, but now you realize 5.9 should have been like high 6s to 7s. Now, even worse than that, you're seeing the potential of an 8.6 that should be even higher. Let me explain to you why it should be higher. So when we look at increases, we look at them as like a month-to-month increase, and we look at them as a year-to-year increase, right? And when we look at these things, if you look at some of like the normal times for what our actual adjustments should be, we should be looking at things like 2.6, 2.5, 3.5, 1.4, 2.7, 4.1, 3.3, 0.0. We should be hearing numbers like that. Stuff that's under 4. Right? But that's not what we're hearing. What we're hearing now is 8.6. And that's because if you look at the news release from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which basically goes through essentially what the big increases were on a month-to-month basis, in a total of a single month, we're seeing the increases of what it used to be of the lower level years of increase. So like April 21 to May 21, we saw a 0.6 increase and 0.7 increase for April and May. If you add up 4 months, you get to the mid-high area. That's how quickly our dollar is failing right now. 0.6%, 0.7, 0.9, 0.5, 0.3, 0.4, 0.9, 0.7, 0.6, 0.6, 0.8, 1.2, 0.3. It's not good. And what it's showing here, and the government can't hide this. They can't. They've already played out their hand, the little tricks that they can do to try and win us back into a situation where it gets better. They've already played out their options. Now it's just math. And so while there's going to be your B2B channel out there that will be like, hey, you're going to get so much money. You're not. You're ending up with significantly less, even though they're giving you a whole lot more. I want to point something out. Things that can improve the overall situation. Some people will argue, well, gasoline doesn't count as much as it should, or it's not counted at all for some of these metrics or whatever. Let me explain something. You can never look at these metrics of the COLA or the CPI as single item fixed points, right? They're always something of an item is used for something else, whether it's fruit that's fed to animals, or it's other meat that's fed to animals, or it's gasoline or fuel that then helps the shipping and transportation industries for other types of products, right? They're all interconnected. None of these things are just the claimed items that they inherently review the most, that they put the most weight towards to give you this increased percentage. So there's always the generalized situation there. Now, as you know, there is a problem with Biden and the whole oil situation. And as you know, President Biden has gone into this very large bit of scrutiny over what he's going to be doing about future Alaska oil. It is interesting that essentially we purchased heavily oil during the Obama era from places like Russia. It is interesting. We got immediately away from that. And we were completely settled and fine as an American country, building an oil future that would sustain us to get into the future battery future, whatever it is, whether it's ion batteries or special diamond batteries or whatever they're coming out with. We needed something to get us to that point. And remember, we wouldn't have battery technology like this unless we had somebody like Elon, because he pushed the envelope and made people catch up. And then the Democrats got on board with it and said, look, we can now push this even more because the technology's there, because this billionaire came out of nowhere and said, I want to push this. Awesome. Now, with that said, and this is incredibly important, and I want you guys to realize this. It just came out with the news for President Biden, specifically, that Biden administration has now canceled the Alaska oil and gas lease sales that were the biggies that we were looking at. Biden administration, and I'll just go through it, CBS News. Biden administration has canceled one of the most high-profile oil and gas lease opportunities pending before the Interior Department. The decision, which halts the potential to drill for oil in over 1 million acres in the Cook Inlet in Alaska, comes at a challenging political moment when gas prices are hitting painful new highs. In a statement shared first with CBS News, the Department of the Interior cited a lack of industry interest in leasing in the area. I'm going to read that again so that you can hear how utterly moronic it is. In a statement shared first with CBS News, the Department of the Interior cited a lack of industry interest in leasing the area. So what they're saying is that people were not bidding enough on it to lease the land to pull the oil out of it that we already know is in the ground. For the decision not to move forward with the Cook Inlet lease sale, the department also halted 2 leases under consideration for the Gulf of Mexico region because of conflicting court rulings that impacted work on these proposed lease sales. Now, look, I know you guys are a little bit brighter than the average, viewership when it comes to people who tune into these channels. I know that because you've tuned into my channel, which is a Debbie Downer channel, but I always share with you the accurate truth. And for that reason, you guys watch me as opposed to these multi-million subscriber people who just put fluff up. And I appreciate that. And that's why after a week, I've returned to do a video because somebody reached out to me and asked me how I was doing, how I was. The reality is I was overstressed. I was tired. I was doing a lot of hearings. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was very tired. So here's what I need to point out to you guys real quick. If we don't have enough fuel, oil, prices, obviously go up because there's more demand, not enough supply. We then need to keep buying from places like Russia, which will stabilize essentially their oil, whatever. And then at the same time, we're balancing this restriction thing because of Ukraine. But we could easily go back to what we had during the prior White House, which was essentially a nation not reliant on Russia for that particular interest. And we did buy other stuff from them. What's weird is that when you start to look at the fact pattern of what we purchased from countries that are harmful to America, Russia, China, stuff like that, some Middle East countries, you realize that the Democrats have a significantly higher purchase interest or buying more stuff from those countries than the Republicans have. I'm going to do a video on that. And what's weird about it is that the Democrats constantly talk about how horrible these other nations are. And yet they're buying into the most products from them, or they're reducing the tariffs, right? The most for them, which then makes our American products not as successful as they could be, right? Because if you put higher tariffs, taxes on international products coming to the US, then US made products, US stuff does better because we're able to offer our US made products at a better price in comparison to the higher taxed European, Russian, Middle East, Asian based products. So the weird thing that I just, the more I research this and look at the numbers, I realize there's a problem. And here's the problem. And I'm going to share with you something that I learned that I don't usually talk about. We want everybody to be equal, at least with legal rights. We know everybody's different. Everybody's got different hands and feet and eyes and hair and whatever. Everybody's different. We know that, and that's a good thing. Diversity is an excellent thing. If you're somebody that doesn't like diversity, then that's not something I stand for, but I'm okay with you wanting that because you're allowed to want whatever you want. So long as it doesn't hurt somebody, cool. But diversity is incredibly important. We need diversity in seeds. We need diversity in breeding animals. We need diversity in products for competition and capitalism. Diversity is key. The problem is that the great lie that everything should be equal is what hides the truth of how things actually work. There is only one thing that defines the outcome of everything in the universe. It's the key. It's the magic number. It's a single word. The single word is consumption. If you look at law and you look at basically how things work in nature, everything is consumption, right? Stars are eaten by black holes and planets are eaten by stars. And the sun putting cancerous, rays into our bodies ages our cells, which then limits our life, which then as a result, we die from that, right? It's everything is a consumption. So for example, and I'm going to do this, but don't, some of you are going to attack me, and I already know I'm going to get some angry phone calls. So just chill your deal. All right. Just hear me out on this. I already got a couple angry phone calls, which is why I took a week off. Part of the reason, anyways. So just hang in there with me while I explain this. Okay. The thing about consumption is that in our legal system, we essentially create laws to try and bind everything together so that people are able to peacefully trade, buy things from each other, and basically create a fair and somewhat equal system for consumers to consume. Okay, that's how it works. It just is what it is. Now, what I want you to understand about this is that that is a legal system that is based on capitalism. Now, before you guys freak out and in the middle of tonight I get some angry phone call, I want you to just hear me out again on this. Number one, in the legal industry, if you don't think our laws are based on capitalism, then just think about this. You have to essentially, have a car to go buy groceries, to go to a job, whatever reason. A lot of you aren't walking because we don't all live in a city with terrible buildings and horrible nature amenities that we all feel clumped in. We don't not everybody chooses that. Some people choose to live in an HOA or a regular house or in the country, whatever. So you have to have a car. And then you have to have insurance for that car in case something happens. So now you, based on your needs, have to go and buy insurance. Step one of capitalism. Then all of a sudden, potentially, you get into an accident. Every personal injury attorney, and you see all these ridiculous over and over advertisements. We're the biggest firm. We're the coolest firm. We have the highest verdicts this year. Blah, 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 blah. You see all these ridiculous, stupid advertisements, right? And to be fair, most people who get injured, they don't even spend 5 minutes trying to do research. They just call whatever person was on the TV, and then they get the lowest settlement, lowest verdict that they potentially could get because they didn't shop around for the best option that's going to customize the work for their claim. Now, the way those firms work, the TV firms, they go to their big lists and they say, I want paragraph 5, paragraph 8, paragraph 23, and paragraph 56 on this. Send it to the insurance company. It's easy law. It's easy. It's way easier than disability law. Personal injury law is way easier than disability law, in my opinion. The way I do disability law is more detailed than a lot of the other attorneys that I interact with. But I will say this: I believe disability law is more. It definitively is. I'll do another video on why it is. Now, with that said, all of a sudden, you've got to get a doctor. They've got to get some money. You've got to get an attorney. They've got to get some money. We've got to have a judicial system, judges. They've got to get some money. We have to have a legal system of all the laws that all these people interact with, including the insurance companies. They've got to get some money. The legislators, who get a lot of money. So the law is based on consumption. In order for you to get the car, you got to have the insurance to get to the job, to make more money. And then on the way home, you get into a car accident. And all of a sudden, now you're into a lawsuit, which has all these consumers as part of it to fulfill that industry, right? Okay. The attorney gets 33% unless it goes to trial, and they get 40%. The doctors might get 10 to 20% on top of that. All of a sudden, now we're at 60%. The person gets 40%, a bunch of little consumers. That's how it works. So the bottom line is that if you understand and are okay with, the idea of it, as a baseline that obviously communism doesn't work. Obviously, mainstream socialism doesn't really work. Unfortunately, capitalism is the thing that works. Monopolies on the other side, we know don't work, right? So what do we end up with? We end up basically with this quasi-socialistic capitalism. Right. And then people like to argue over whether we have a democracy or a republic. Those people, in my opinions, don't actually understand how the system works. We don't have a democracy. We don't have a republic. We have essentially a consumer oriented country. Everybody is consuming. Now, you could say that's not how nature works, because matter can neither be created nor destroyed, right? The classic argument against everything's consumable. Okay, fine. But let me ask you this. Do the giant black holes care about the suns and the planets and the humans that they're consuming? They don't care. These giant rocks that we live on, the mega boulders, these big round things called Earth and other planets, do you think when these other, even larger entities consume them, black holes in the cosmos, that they care? No, they don't care. There's no care. It's all just consumption. Something is eating something else. And that's what capitalism is. It's basically building a better service or product to feed somebody that wants to buy into it. And I learned this at first in some of my, the groups I'm part of. And then I had an opportunity to sit down when I was looking for office space about 9 years ago with a guy that sold the timeshares. And let me tell you, those timeshare salesmen are the best salesmen in the world. They're selling a horrible product, but they are the best salesmen in the world because they understand consumption. And the thing that they understand, and that's Sweetie in the background being grumpy because she wants a treat, but the thing that they understand is that most human beings, if you take them out of the thing that they know, that they feel comfortable in, right? That thing that they're like, this is my field, this is my education. If you take them out of that and put them into a situation where they're in a new spot, then they are usually feeling insecure and they're willing to spend more money. That's the reality. And so you could get highly intelligent NASA engineers and lawyers and judges and top level accountants spending money on a timeshare when we all know that's a terrible idea. We all know that's a horrible idea. The tactics that they use are emotion based. Now, let me tell you something. If we wanted to fix the system for humans, right? This whole legal, you have to buy insurance, you get into an accident, you got to hire an attorney, you got to hire a doctor, the judge has to be paid for through the county and the state and the Fed, and the legislators have to be paid for to fix the system. If we wanted to fix the system, we could design cars to be much safer, right? So that people it would be very unlikely that somebody be injured in an accident. We could design them so that the likelihood of the injury to the body would be almost certainly impossible to occur. We could design them that way. We don't, because there's an entire industry of people making money off of when people get injured. Well, think about that. What if we made cars to significantly have more safety features, more buffers, more crumple zones, more protection, the whole thing across everything, right? If we did that, then we wouldn't need as many judges, and we wouldn't need as many attorneys, and we wouldn't need as many legislators, and we wouldn't need as many insurance companies. We wouldn't need as much of all these things. We wouldn't need people to work as hard to make the money to pay for them all. So the point here is that we as Americans and the rest of the country design things purposely to cater to the consumption of whatever that human can make in a month. And so the inherent problem with this is that we are seeing basically the downfall of America right now, because other countries out there are restricting their use of American tender, right, our dollar bill, as international trade currency. And when they do that, when China leaves us with that, everything falls apart. Gas will hit $10 a gallon, things like that. Everything falls apart. So the whole thing here is this. Yeah, exactly. And I see Mary G, we could stop cancer. There are countries, Israel is one of them, that, because I'm Jewish and I follow that stuff. But the point is, Israel has a lot of medical treatments that are decades ahead of where the US is at. And that's because their medical big pharma companies are focused on making money, but also the laws that are created in that country do not allow them to get away with as much as the laws in this country. Whereas the laws in this country, we notice a lot, the cures aren't coming out anymore. We had cures left and right and left and right, and some worked and some didn't back in the day. Now what we have is you can take a pill for the rest of your life. You have to pay to take this pill for the rest of your life. That's America. And that is greed. Deb Carter, you're absolutely right. That is greed. But remember, it's all based on consumption. Think about it this way. And here's a weird way to look at it. When people want more stuff, they have to earn more to consume more. Or they just have to have credit cards and, loans and stuff like that. Most Americans now have some pretty significant credit card debt. In fact, I'm going to be doing a video on how much most disabled individuals and retired people have as per credit card debt. And the numbers will astound you. And at the same time, it'd be like, yeah, that makes sense because I have something like that. The only thing that beats this whole consumer situation is when people realize that they don't need to be part of the game. But there's not enough Americans to realize that they don't want to be part of the game, to change how they purchase things and how they allow the government to control them. There's just not enough people to realize it. Maybe there will be. Maybe this YouTube channel, maybe other YouTube channels that are much larger. Maybe the legacy news channels will start to instruct people and teach them how things work. Maybe our school system will teach kids how to do their taxes, how to start a business, all that stuff. Maybe. What I think is happening going forward now is that this, I hope and I pray, is going to be the last year that we have horrific dollar devaluation. If we continue to have horrific dollar devaluation, you will probably get an even bigger boost next year for the 2024 season. Now we get to 2024 presidential election situation. Both the left side legacy news channels and the right side legacy news channels are saying Biden is unlikely to win. They're even saying now for the midterm elections, based on numbers and whatever they're finding, that essentially it looks like the Senate is almost certainly going to go to the right, and even the House is likely to go to the right, which makes President Biden a lame duck who can't pass anything but for executive orders and executive agreements with foreign nations, which means that increases to Social Security benefits beyond COLA increases are not going to happen. And then the Democrats will blame the Republicans for not allowing these increases, even though they had 2 years to make it happen. So what will happen next throughout this process is, just so you guys know what bad things are coming up and good things that are coming up. The war in Ukraine does obviously put a drag on our ability to, have a higher worth of the US dollar, for sure. It's not the major thing that the current White House administration is saying it is, but it does. At any point, the Ukraine war could end. It's obviously not going to be a situation like Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, where, to some degree, we're just there all the time for years and years, for decades, right? So the bottom line is, and remember, we all have a short memory with this stuff. The most shameful withdrawal of our forces in the history of America happened under this administration with the Afghanistan withdrawal, where women who literally did not know, these restrictions of humanity, were once again thrown into it at a high speed. You had women that were becoming high-level professionals in that country. None of them are now. None of them. None of them. So essentially, you have to keep something in mind with this. Other countries throughout, Earth have things that they buy internationally. And then for the most part, they all use one international bank trading system, right? That's what you guys learned about. Remember when Russia was kicked off of it because of the whole Ukraine situation, right? That was a good move and a bad move. That was a good move because we were sanctioning them. It was a bad move because now all of a sudden they're just going to create their own technology to do that. And so what happens is instead of these other countries buying American tender as the international trade commodity to buy stuff and sell stuff at list price or whatever, now they're going to be just using their currencies. And now they're just going to be essentially taking all that money that they had of US tender, trading it in, and just using their currencies, which means that something that's faster than America printing money is when a major, mega country automatically dumps the US tender that they had on file. That's faster and worse than printing money. And so what's happening now is that when they dump those funds, they sell them back, whether they give them to their citizens and they dump it like that, or they dump it in whatever way, it instantly devalues the dollar. And it devalues it at a very high level so that everything basically is just going to be significantly more expensive. So the next thing that's coming up that is more horrific to Americans than the Ukraine-Russia war is what's going to happen with the US dollar. After that, the next problem that we face with this whole situation is essentially, are we getting dragged into a World War III? If we're getting dragged into a World War III, then all the metrics we have, we don't know what's going to happen because the technology now with these wars is so different than every war we've had before. This war that we have now, is nothing like the war we had in World War II or World War I or all of them in between. The technologies are just too different now. So the future of this is, it looks grim, but there is a really positive thing that's going on. If we are able to go back to understanding and appreciating the idea of consumption as a legal doctrine, right? Consumption, that we use things and need things and consume things. Certain things, as per our laws, will change. In order to have great consumption, we need healthy people. The cost of healthy people, to have medical professionals work with them, is less than the capacity of those people to work and earn more money if they're healthy and wanting to consume. That's a little tricky thing to think about with capitalism, which is that which is why I don't know why the Republicans didn't jump on this. They should have. They actually want people to be able to work more hours and achieve more work product. And the only way you can do that is by giving them health insurance. So if you really did have a Medicare for all, bottom line, you would get more work product, ergo you would have more consumption. There's another thing that is important. America has a lot of resources, a lot of companies and things like that have the potential and the knowledge base to fix a lot of the energy problems that we currently have. I'm going to now tell you a personal story that I saw when they shut down that XL pipeline. There was a guy who was set up with these really expensive, RV things and tents, like these military tents and these big specialized RVs to go and train people for the pipeline activities for the XL pipeline. And what happened was when that deal was set up, he was ready to go. He had all the gear, big expenditures, etc. Then it got killed because President Biden won the election. He ended up giving what was left of that company to his kids. He now lives in Florida, and he sold to me the aluminum stairs that went onto those specialized trailers that he had. There were training trailers. You pull up, you can train people in the trailers. I now own the stairs that went into them. And so the point here is this. A lot of people say that we don't have the technology or the expertise or the raw material. We have all of that. What we don't have right now is good leadership to prioritize that American skill and quality product making. Now, when people talk about American exceptionalism, they're turning a blind eye to a reality that we really should talk about for 1 second. And that's that Americans are not always exceptional. We're not exceptional when it comes to education. We're not exceptional when it comes to exporting products. A lot of people don't want to buy them. We're not exceptional when it comes to making products that we sell internally. The real McCoy. How many American-made products are the real McCoy anymore? Other than maybe like the firearms industry. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, you tell me what products are made in the U.S. that are the real McCoy that are really great nowadays. That maybe it's a legacy brand from back in the day, but there's definitely no new technology stuff that's the real McCoy. So the point here is that we have to acknowledge that in order to make great products, it takes great skilled labor, and we killed off as a country great skilled labor because we got rid of production, warehouses, all that stuff. Most warehouses now are just used to hold things that are already pre-finished products or servers, like what our computers talk to on the internet, etc. Like when you access a website, there's a hard drive in a warehouse somewhere that is just sending you code from what's on that website. That's the reality we live in. So kind of the bottom line is, yeah, hand tools maybe. Even the electrical hand tools that are made nowadays aren't even that good. They're not as good as they used to be. Even the hand tools that were in the textile industry aren't as good as they used to be. It's just we don't have it. Hershey's, look, I have a soft spot. Jane Doe, I have a soft spot for Hershey's. I love their cheap, dirty chocolate. My family gets that expensive, like high-end cocoa stuff and blah 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 this and like Lindt chocolate. I'm not into that. I love my cheap Hershey's chocolate. I grew up on that. So the whole point here is that we have to acknowledge that in order to get America back on track, we have to make products that people want to buy that are going to last. Because people are going to want to consume products if they can rely on a warranty and have an expectation of quality over a period of time. We don't have that. We don't have that. Look at the refrigerators from back in the day that lasted 50 years. The new fridges, you get 10 years and you were very lucky. The products that we're just starting to see, and I say this, and I realize that there's going to be some John Deere people in the chat session. But as you know, John Deere tractors over the past 20 years have not been made so well. And they limited them so that you couldn't repair them if you needed to. And they had a whole big lawsuit about that. So a lot of people switched over to Kubota. That's what my family started with, not an American product. And I grew up on a farm. You guys have seen the videos of me working on the farm. Bottom line, we use Kubotas. I love Kubotas. I can't afford a lot of Kubotas, but I have some Kubota stuff. So the bottom line is this. We are not able to make products that we respect in this country like we used to for the most part. That has to change. Now, some of you automatically say that the prior administration's president, and if I say his name, then that'll actually hurt the video. But the bottom line is the prior administration's president was good for that. And he was in many ways. The reality is that he unfortunately was pushing an extreme capitalism, which was mostly the big business capitalism. And that's not what's going to fix this country, because in order to get better products, we need innovation from smaller companies that are building custom things that make things better, that are able to compete against the Goliaths we already have. So the problem is we don't need that form of capitalism. We need small, middle-sized business opportunities to go ahead and create better consumption of products. Now, let me give you an example of Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight makes junky tools. Some of them are awesome. A lot of them are just, you use them a couple of times and then you bring them back for the warranty and swap them out. That's the game everybody plays. Everybody does it. Everybody does it. It's wrong. It's unethical, but everybody does that, right? You go to Home Depot, you find something similar. It's drastically more expensive, twice as expensive, 3 times as expensive, etc. We have to acknowledge that some products that we buy, we're not going to use more than 2 or 3 times. We have to acknowledge that some products that we buy have to actually last. So then America started to do this game where they were like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and make consumer versions, commercial versions, and industrial versions, right? And the industrial is the only thing that's basically made in America still. The commercial stuff is mostly made in China and some other spots, and then of course the low level consumer stuff, that's all China. It's just all China. Used to be some Taiwan, used to be some of this or that. It's Vietnam. It's all China. So the thing is, they created these products with the expectation that you would spend so much to get so much out of it, yada yada yada. The problem is none of the things we buy anymore are worthy of handing down to our kids. So we don't want to spend any money on it. So China wins because they've taught us to be throw out consumers, disposable consumers, right? You know, you might buy a cheap Husqvarna lawnmower that'll last you 3-4 years, or you could buy a Kubota that lasts you 25 years, 35 years, and the price is there. But the thing is, China's figured out a way to make products so cheap that you could buy 3 of those Husqvarnas for the same price as the Kubota's low end. So China won that battle. That's the whole reason China won. Cheap shipping, and you could buy a zillion of them and break them and still have some left over compared to the one that's made well. And then, of course, there's the other reason they won, which is that Americans are slowly losing brain power when it comes to how to repair anything. You know, the joke about, like, you know, in the car manual, it says don't drink the battery, you know, versus back in the day, they showed you how to actually replace tires, you know, do basic maintenance and upkeep the vehicle, etc. And then some people would argue, well, we don't want to have to deal with that stuff anymore. Can't the cars just be better? Can't the cars just work better, etc.? Yeah, but then we're back to consumerism. Then we have to get rid of a lot of the lawyers and the judges and the legislators and the doctors that we use for these cheap pieces of junk car that, you know, if we made them better, we wouldn't have people in accidents all the time. Right? Think about it this way. Let's assume a vehicle was driving and another vehicle was driving. We could install in these cars some sort of system that could sense other vehicles around it and immediately correctively fix whatever potential accident was going to happen no matter what. We could do that. We have the technology to do that. But we don't until we're just starting to now with Tesla and other car companies that are handling automated driving. So the point of this video, you know, remember, if you learned anything from it, awesome. If you didn't, it's, you know, it is what it is. The point of this video is to show you guys that we have some big problems coming up, which means you're going to get the largest increases in your retirement benefits and your disability benefits and your widow's benefits and your auxiliary benefits and your disabled little child benefits. You're going to get the largest increases, the biggest amount of increase you've ever seen this year, right? Over the past 40 years. Last year was also an over the past 40 years. It was. Now, is Biden going to beat Jimmy Carter's 14.3%, 9.9%, 11.2%? I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe. But if that happens, we're talking the economy is completely failing. Not just like what these other YouTube channels are talking about with a recession. I'm talking way worse than recession. I'm talking way worse than 08, 09, 2010. Remember, the COLA for 08 was 2.3%, 09, 5.8%, 2010, 2011, 0% and 0%. And there's not really many people who look at the 2010 and 2011 years that was some finagling on behalf of the government. That there was magically 0% increase in the cost of living. Let me look real quick and see how many times that's happened in the history of this entire program since 1975 when they had a cost of living adjustment increase. It happened in 2016, it happened in 2010, 2011, and never happened before that. So the point that I'm getting at here is that I just want you to understand we have some bad things coming up, which means you're going to get more money, but the money you have is going to be worth significantly less. If President Biden wants to be effective at saving the people from crisis, he needs to limit rental increases. He needs to limit tax increases. He needs to have more tax forgiveness. He needs to have cheaper fuel. And he needs to basically find a way to get more food out there at a cheaper price that's still allowable for these farmers to make a decent dollar. If we can do that, we have a safe ride into the future. If he continues to cancel massive, and I mean, it's not, I mean, it's, look, when you're talking about the acreage in Alaska that he has cut off essentially from doing a deal, 1 million acres in the Cook Inlet in Alaska, when you're talking about millions, right, of acres and not having the leases set up for oil, it's a classic example of something else is going on. No normal leader would say, we're in a crisis for oil. We need oil really badly. Let's rely on these countries that aren't healthy for us. They wouldn't do that. What they would do is they would get their butt over there to Alaska, figure out a way to get companies to be interested in getting that oil out of the ground and work a deal, a consumption deal. Get that oil out. We'll give you preferential treatment for this particular area, and you get it to the U.S., right? You get it all distributed throughout Alaska. You get it on boats to Hawaii. You get it over to the U.S., etc. You get it out of the ground. That's the opposite of what President Biden is doing right now. I want to make you aware of this so that you know. I hope all is going well. I'm going to be going to bed because it's 3 a.m. And kind of the bottom line is that, unfortunately, I have 2 hearings in the morning that are really early, so I've got to do them. But after that, I don't have any more hearings for the rest of the day, so that's 2 thumbs up. Anyways, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in. And tomorrow's our big day. Remember, every Thursday, 2 hours live. And that's where I answer questions for people who have them about Social Security disability benefits. Final note, please remember to like, subscribe. And with the 5-star reviews, if you could go to Google, type in disability resolution, the law firm, and just give a 5-star review, I would immensely appreciate it. All right, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. Have a wonderful day, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.